before we start closing this out, because this is something that I also asked Melissa when we were doing the Colombian side of the preview, and I wanted to bring to you as well, Lori. Like looking at the history between these two teams, I love looking at it because even though it's going to be the ninth and the 10th time that they're playing each other, but a lot of these games between these two teams have come very recently, like within the last decade. And then there's obviously some things from within the Olympics that you could probably attest to as well when it comes to going up against these teams. I think people look at on paper, they look at those score lines and they sort of throw that out the window. They throw out the concept of a rivalry between these two teams and just say that doesn't exist. But I think that's a little unfair because I think if you're looking at records between teams, I mean, you can maybe use the same argument against Canada, that United States has a better record there too, and somehow yet they are heralded as the main rivals of the United States. Yeah. Right, in terms of the North, in terms of the Americas, whether it's North, Central, or South. So when I'm looking at the history between Colombia, I am like, there's actually a good rivalry here between these two teams. And I wondered if you could talk a little bit about that with us on the USA side of things, because Melissa spoke with us a little bit about it on the Colombia side of things.
Yeah, I think anytime you put on the jersey for the US too, you realize that everyone's showing up like to play their best game, right? And that has evolved over the years and exactly what we've been talking about throughout this podcast. That the game's grown and is growing. And so there's more opportunities, more players are playing, they're playing against best players. So, and when you play the US, you also know it's like, here we go. There's going to be a lot of pressure and there's going to be players coming off the bench that can apply the same amount, right, of pressure and withstand the same amount and go, and they want to score goals, right, where it works. So I think that's part of it. But also on the other side is we play a lot of games, the US does. So it's a scoutable team. And so it is the most scouted. And that's a huge advantage for a lot of these players and teams coming in to understand some nuance of what the U.S. is trying to do and how to stop. And so I think that always adds an interesting element. And there's been some fun games. Like, I mean, we play, to your point about the Olympics, right? And then the World Cup. Regardless of the scoreline, I mean, this is going to be a good Colombia team, right? And they're going to be organized and they're going to be understanding what's the task at hand, about what actually is a top of mind, which is qualifying for the World Cup next month for them, right? So, yeah, I think there's always some excitement when these teams play, and like I said, regardless of the scoreline, they're much tighter than sometimes the score always shows. So I think this is going to be fun, and there's going to be some young and new players for Colombia that will get opportunities. That is always just going to continue to elevate their nation as well. So
I love that. Let's start closing it out. Let's close it out on this one, since we both agree that there's going to be a score line and that's going to look a certain type of way, maybe in these games. And we're all excited to see this combination of Smith, Pugh, and Morgan in some capacity. And when you hear those names in the lineup, you imagine that, yes, there will be some goals happening. So let me ask you guys this, instead of putting like a prediction or a score line on things, who would you like to see have a big game in any of these two friendlies over the course of the next week? Who's your player that you are zeroing in on and say you want to have really good games heading into Concacaf qualifiers?
Well, I mean, I can't just do two. I can't just do one. I got to do two. And
I was, my brain's like 3, 4. Like,
yeah, go ahead, name them. Drop names.
Well, listen, there would be a lot of players actually that like would be fun to like say why I think this is right and like why not. But honestly, for me, it's without dissecting it tactically and stuff, I'm going with Mallory Pugh and with Sophia Smith. And the reason why I'm picking those two is because they have been so fun to watch in our league. They are on fire, but most importantly, it feels like they're having fun and they're playing with joy. And I want that for them always with this national team, right? And and it's not even like they're the future; they're the now. So we also. I think they know that they like people expect them to score, right? And they want to score. I mean, I think they welcome that. So those are the two players for me. It's like, I feel like it has less to do regardless of the score line. And if there is like a lopsided score line or not, it's more about those players are playing at an incredibly high level, and it more has to do with that than anything else than like how is Colombia defending or not or whatever, right? It's more about those players and what they're bringing. So it'd be those two.
I agree. I mean, I love the shout to Pugh and Smith. Pugh is one of mine for sure. I want her to have a fantastic game, have fun with it. I'm expecting like 3 assists from her over maybe like 4 or 5 over the 2 friendlies, but like she's a huge assist player, right? And then if I look at Sophia Smith, like I want her to score goals. Like I want her to just like get so confident in finishing and shooting and finding the open pockets and slotting the ball past the goalkeeper, right? Like as simple as that sounds. But so Mallory Pugh was the one that came to mind initially for me, and like just rack up the assists, girlfriend, like go for it. And then Andi Sullivan. I want Sullivan to have a knockdown game. I want her to be firing on all cylinders, unstoppable. Defensively, the biggest lock that the United States has on the pitch, center backs, outside backs, midfielders, forwards. I want her to be defensively all over the place, stopping every play that happens. And then offensively to really control the tempo of the game and switch the point of attack. Like I'm waiting for that game from Andi Sullivan where it's like, yes, you are our 6 and I am so here for it, because I don't think we've seen that yet from her, as I am owning this position and it is mine and no one can take it from me. So I want to see that game from Andi Sullivan in either of these matches, preferably both of them. But those are my players, Mallory Pugh and Andi Sullivan.
I'm with you guys. Listen, I'm shocked that nobody chose a defender here on attacking third, so I'm going to go with it. We talked a little bit tactically about things, and if there's going to be some interesting matchups in the middle, I'm not going to be anti-long ball in this game at all. Why don't you just see a center back lob one over that entire middle third and see what happens when you lay it off to a Mal Pugh or a Sophia Smith? Just see what happens. I would love to see an Alana Cook or Naomi Girma assist in either of these games. I want to see it. Let me see the defenders in the scoreboard and in the scoreline. I would love to see it. So I'm going to be looking at those two, but we cannot leave off players like Pugh and Smith as players that we want to see have big games, big breakout moments in these matches leading up to the qualifiers. So I'm with the two of you, but I would like to maybe see some of that as well. I think these are 2 center backs who have some really good vision and have some really good distribution as well. So I wouldn't mind seeing that at all. Who doesn't love a good long ball over the top? Let's see what happens. Let's see what happens. Stay tuned. Stay tuned. Thank you, everybody, so much for listening to Attacking Third. As always, follow us on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram at Attacking Third. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and anywhere you listen to your shows. We're also available as video. Subscribe on youtube.com/Attacking Third. If you've got questions for us, you can leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts with your question, and we will answer it during a mailbag segment